Jesus began as a Jew, but if he said and believed the things attributed to him in the Gospels, he didn't end as a Jew. Furthermore, his followers, beginning not long after his death, adopted beliefs and made rules that placed them and their new church outside of Judaism. The Gospels have Jesus saying things like, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. He who hath seen me hath seen the Father," and, "Before Abraham was, I am," is meant as a quite specific reference to something that Yahweh, the God of the Jews, would say about himself. In another passage, Jesus claims the authority to forgive sins, not sins against Jesus himself but wrongs done by one man to another. His hearers object to this as blasphemous. Whether or not Jesus actually said and believed these things is a matter for scholars to debate, but the authors of the Gospels thought he had, and such beliefs are not consistent with Judaism. Indeed, in the 8th chapter of John, where he says, "Before Abraham was, I am," his hearers are so offended that they wish to stone him. Their reasons would be obvious to Jews or those with a knowledge of Judaism. In Judaism, only God is God, and there is no provision for him becoming incarnate, and coming to earth as a man, which is the Christian message. In Judaism, Yahweh has given commands to his chosen people about sacrifices, ritual purity, etc., while in the Acts of the Apostles, an early church council excuses new converts from circumcision, which was an important sign, to the Jews, of belonging to their community. Furthermore, St. Paul, whose letters were in circulation before most of the Gospels were composed, calls Jesus, Lord of all, which no good Jew would ever say of a fellow human, and says that Jesus abolished the law of sacrifices. This is clearly different from what Judaism taught, and I am sure any rabbi would say the same. Edit, September 18, 2019. I should also have thought of this and included it in my original answer. John chapter 6 verses 53 to 55 has Jesus saying to his followers, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink." That such comments are not normative to Judaism should be obvious from the fact that his own disciples immediately object to such a claim and some turn away from him and are no longer his followers. There was, indeed, a continuing Christian sect, populated in part by those who claimed to be related to Jesus, who revered him but still tried to maintain Christianity as a group within Judaism, but this group was swallowed up in the 2nd century, and their teachings were no longer considered normative within the Church. Let's remember also that other religious movements have been founded, or at least the teachings of that movement based on, figures who began as something else. Was Buddha a Buddhist? I believe he was born Hindu but began to teach that it was possible to escape the wheel of death and rebirth within a single lifetime through enlightenment, a teaching that was not normative to Hinduism. Martin Luther was a Catholic, an Augustinian friar, and later Catholic theologians have even acknowledged that given a little less stubbornness and egotism on both sides, the Catholic Church of Luther's day might have incorporated and profited from some of his teachings, but instead, we ended with a whole separate branch of Protestant Christianity. The same is true of John Calvin, who was born a Catholic, and after his death, even some Catholic theologians adopted ideas on human sinfulness and divine sovereignty that were similar to Calvin's ideas, but Calvinism and Catholicism are now quite different. Muhammad was not born a Muslim, and his references are to Jewish and Christian teachings. Abraham, Noah, Moses, and Jesus all appear in the Quran and are treated with respect, but what Muhammad made of these ideas gave us Islam. Finally, John Wesley was not born a Methodist. He was an Anglican, and Methodism began only as a practical and systematic way for Anglicans to live lives of greater sanctity in a generally loose age. Still, Methodism emerged as its own denomination and something different from much of mainstream Anglicanism. Because of two guys, Saul of Tarsus and Constantine. Jesus was born a Jew, regarded himself as a Jew, was a rabbi who served Capernaum, Latin corruption of Capharnaum, a small Jewish village on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, and the surrounding communities including Bethesda, corruption of Hebrew Beit Zaida. He was probably born not in Bethlehem, Hebrew Beit Lehem, but in Bethlehem of the Galilee, Beit Lehem Haglalī, a small village near Nazareth. As a rabbi he was probably married, since it is highly unlikely an unmarried man would have been accepted as a rabbi. Jesus, in Hebrew Yeshu or Yeshua, an abbreviated form of Yeshayahu, the Hebrew form of Isaiah, was, as a rabbi, a Pharisee. At that time there was a major schism in the Jewish world between the Pharisees, the rabbinical party, and the Sadducees, from the Hebrew word Zadok, a family of high priests which dominated the temple, which could be described as the priestly party. This struggle over Jewish identity, law and ritual had been going on for over half a century, and the civil war it ignited was the main reason the Hasmonean kingdom collapsed and succumbed to Rome. Jesus, a radical Pharisee, tried to organize an uprising against the priestly establishment. The Romans, who wanted stability and supported the priestly establishment that collaborated with them, were not willing to risk any upheavals in a province already seething with unrest, acted to end the uprising before it could gather momentum. They arrested its charismatic leader Jesus, and executed him by crucifixion. Jesus' followers, called Nazarenes, Nazrim in Hebrew, from the Hebrew word for Nazareth Nazareth, remained a marginal sect within Pharisee Judaism. By that time the Roman Hellenistic world was recognizing the intellectual emptiness of its idolatry, and was becoming increasingly attracted to Jewish monotheism. Judaism however rebuffed them, insisting that anyone wanting to be Jewish had to not just accept the Jewish faith, but join the Jewish nation, which required circumcision. This the vast majority of would-be converts were unwilling to do, who in their right mind would swap being Roman for being Jewish, a nation Rome had just defeated. Enter a chap named Saul, a knowledgeable and learned Jew from the city of Tarsus in Syria. In addition to being a man of great intellect, he was also somewhat of an outcast among his own people. His misogyny and hang-ups regarding sex probably was a result of what we would call today gender identity issues. He probably was either a closet gay or closet transgender, both grave sin in Judaism. While traveling from Tarsus to Damascus, he had his epiphany, and realized that the key to solving his world's greatest problem was to reinvent Judaism so it could be accepted as a faith without requiring joining the Jewish nation. He was undoubtedly one of the world's greatest PR guys, a real spin master. He spun a new universalist version of Judaism, separating faith from nationality, based on the teachings of some of the later biblical prophets, especially 2nd Isaiah. In order to make it more attractive to the Hellenistic world, the religion he invented, which went on to become Christianity, should actually be called Polyontheity, since it was based on Paul's teachings, not Jesus. He mixed Jewish and Hellenistic themes, such as Christ being the Son of God, a concept totally alien to Judaism but logical to a culture based on Greek-Roman mythology. He was successful beyond his wildest dreams. Within a century his new religion Christianity had spread like wildfire throughout the Roman Empire. Constantine, unlike previous emperors who insisted on trying to eradicate Christianity, decided to co-opt it, making it the official religion of the Roman Empire. This required even further distancing and even alienating it from its Jewish national origins, until it became completely divorced from them. As we all know, it was perhaps history's worst divorce, resulting in almost 2 millennia of virulent hatred and bad blood between the two. The entire process took about 100 to 150 years. Paul lived and taught around 50 CE. When he died, around 70 CE Christians were regarded as a sect within Judaism. By 200 to 250 CE this was no longer the case, as the vast majority of Christians were not Jewish followers of Jesus, but Roman followers of Paul's teachings.